The Rangers come up short in a 3-2 loss to the Calgary Flames, but Kaapo Kakko looks like a natural at center. Should the Rangers consider making him a full-time center? Plus, we discuss the controversial hand pass.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1188 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers come up short in Calgary 3-2. This snaps their three-game winning streak, the last two of which came on the road. Obviously, they're still getting toward the end of this four-game road trip here. Really just makes you want to win that last game of the road trip that much more. When you start a four-game road trip 2-0 and then you lose, let's not go 2-2. Let's get 3-1, and I think we'll all be feeling really, really good about what the Rangers have done over this last handful of games here. But honestly, just one of the stranger games that the Rangers have played this entire season. They basically took the game off for the first, 36, 37 minutes, something like that. Then they explode for 2 goals in the span of 16 seconds. Competitive back and forth third period. Some controversy involving a hand pass or a non-hand pass. We saw Kaapo Kakko really, for the first time ever, get some extended run at center, and that's actually where we're going to start today. There's a lot to talk about in this one. Igor Shesterkin standing on his head, the Rangers forgetting to play defense. We'll get to all that good stuff in due time here, but we'll start with Kakko and the idea, the concept of potentially moving him to center full-time or part-time, or at least some of the time. You know, the Rangers have some options here, but in general, the idea of moving Kakko to center, that's something that I'm more on board with than I thought that I would be initially, because this has been going on for a while, even before this season. Previous seasons, we've seen every now and then there will be some steam that picks up on Rangers social media where somebody tosses out the idea of Kakko playing center. A couple other people get on board with it. And it's one of those things that up until now has mostly been fan created. You know, fans will talk about this and that, and everybody's got an idea on how the Rangers can improve. But now we actually saw it in practice by the Rangers themselves in this game. This is the first time, like I said, that we saw Kakko get some actual extended run as a center. This wasn't a case of like, oh, well, he took 1 or 2 faceoffs or something like that. No, he was taking faceoffs and playing center for the entire second half of this game. I didn't notice exactly when this switch was made, but I think it was about midway through the second period there. They had Kakko playing between Will Cooley and Jimmy Vesey. Vesey bumped up to the third line. Brodzinski didn't really play a whole lot in this game, but he moved down to the fourth line. And that newfound line with Kakko centering it, again, left to right, Cooley, Kakko, and Vesey, they were out there for the game-tying goal in this game. Big spot, big moment for this trio. And in fact, the Rangers scored their 2 goals just 16 seconds apart. You had a goal scored by Alexis Lafreniere late in the second period. That cut the Flames' lead to 2-1. And then the Rangers did what I've been clamoring for them to do for almost the entire season. They went with the third line in the shift that follows a goal. Now, this is a slightly different iteration of the third line, but regardless of who it is, give me that third line out there. It's basically been all season, aside from a very brief line change experiment, basically the entire season, you've had Cooley and Kakko on the third line. Whether the third man on that line is Filip Chytil or Johnny Brodzinski or Jimmy Vesey as it was here, that's still my pick for the line that I want to see out there. Starting games, starting periods, I would love to see that because they are so good defensively and you don't have to worry about giving up an early goal, or at least not as much as you would have to otherwise if that line was not out there. So you've got that. And just the fact that, these guys have earned it. They've played well this season. I think that, the shift after a goal has been an Achilles heel for the Rangers at times over the last handful of seasons here. So this is my line. Give me these guys, whatever version of it is, whichever trio of players that are available in that game, that are active, that are on this third line. Give me that line on the ice in the shift that follows a goal. And naturally, it paid off beautifully for the Rangers. The goal is scored by Lafreniere, so the lead is now cut to 2-1. And then you've got a face-off. The Rangers actually lose this face-off. More specifically, Kakko loses the face-off, but the Flames immediately take an icing, like literally 2 seconds after the puck drops. So Offensive zone faceoff for the Rangers. They're in the Calgary zone. Kakko wins it clean, gets it back to Fox. A couple of seconds later, you've got Miller taking a shot from the point, and Will Cooley is in front, and he deflects it into the net, ties the game at 2-2. So I've seen all I need to see as far as which line deserves to be on the ice in the shift that follows a goal. For me, it's this third line for sure. One thing about Kakko playing center, to kind of bring it all back to that, I will say this. I wish they would have done this a little bit in the preseason. To me, that's the perfect time to kind of experiment with some things, try some different line combinations, try some different defense pairings, play this guy at that position, do this, do that, put that guy in the power play, put this guy in the penalty kill. Rangers didn't do that. It's probably not that big of a deal, though, because Kakko has played center in the past. I don't think he's ever lined up as a center in a game for the Rangers the way that he did in this game last night. But in Liga, before he was drafted by the Rangers, he played all three forward positions. So it's not a foreign concept to him. He knows how to play the position. And for what it's worth, obviously a big aspect of playing center is your success on the face-off circle, right? So Kakko thus far this season, very small sample size, but he is 13-10 when it comes to winning face-offs. Again, that's basically a microscopic sample size, if we're being honest here, when it comes to faceoffs, because these guys that play center for an entire season, they end up, winning a couple hundred faceoffs, losing a couple hundred faceoffs. Kakko's at 13-10, but if nothing else, he has won more than half, and this does probably give you a little bit of an idea that certainly he's not going to be overwhelmed on the faceoff circle. He will, at the very least, hold his own, which is something that he did in this game as well. He went 6-3 on the faceoff dot, and more importantly, he seemed to be winning the faceoffs that the Rangers really needed to win. We just mentioned the one that led to the goal by Will Cooley that tied the game at 2-2. That was in the offensive zone. There was also a sequence in this game where the Rangers were on the power play, and about midway through the power play, puck goes out of play, or maybe the goalie froze it. I don't remember. But bottom line, they took the first unit off, they put the second unit on, and Kakko won like 3 or 4 straight faceoffs. What ended up happening here was he kept winning the faceoff, relatively clean or totally clean. And then the Rangers would get, a quick shot on net and the save would be made. But now you've got another offensive zone faceoff. And this kept happening. This happened like 3 or 4 times in a row. And Kakko just kept winning every faceoff. So it was nice to see him come through in some big spots when it comes to winning faceoffs. One other thing that it's more of a question I propose more than a point that I'm going to make. If Kakko plays center, if the Rangers go through with this and they've seen everything that they need to see and they think, okay, Kaapo Kakko is a center now, my question is, what happens when Filip Chytil comes back? Now, we don't know exactly when Chytil is going to be back. He rejoined the team and he was on the ice by himself after the Rangers did their practice earlier in the day. He was out there at least skating a little bit. Do the Rangers do something that I suggested very early in this podcast history, and do they consider moving Chytil to the wing? You could do that. You could just flip-flop the two of them. You could put Kakko at center and put Filip Chytil at wing. I get the feeling they won't do that. I feel like if and when Chytil gets back into the lineup, they'll put Chytil at center and Kakko will be at right wing. But it is nice to have some options, which leads me into something else that I want to talk about as it pertains to the idea of Kakko being able to play center. If you're the Rangers, and more specifically the front office and Chris Drury, what Kakko's ability to play center does for you is it gives you some more flexibility down the road, namely at the trade deadline this season. Because to me, when you're looking at the trade deadline, you have to have a plan in place for if Filip Chytil is unable to play in the playoffs. Filip Chytil has been through a lot, and that's really unfortunate. And Filip Chytil, the person, comes before Filip Chytil, the hockey player. But the Rangers have to be realistic with themselves. There's no way of knowing that Filip Chytil is going to be available when it comes to Stanley Cup playoff action this season. And that being the case, I've been saying that I feel like the Rangers, going into the trade deadline, have to figure out a way to bring in a center to have a backup plan in place, somebody that can play third-line center if Filip Chytil is not available, much like they did with the Alex Wenberg trade last season. You got to do something similar this year. However, if Kaapo Kakko shows the ability to play center, and he's able to do that, a decent amount between now and the trade deadline, then that gives the Rangers more flexibility at said trade deadline. Because now, okay, Kakko can play center or wing, so we don't necessarily have to go out and get a center. We can go out and get a winger if there's a team that we're talking about, this center over here, but they want too much in return for the trade. Okay, thanks, but no thanks. We'll move on. We'll go trade for a wing from some other team, and we can leave Kakko at third-line center. That gives you a lot more flexibility, and centers are always in high demand. It's hard to get your hands on a really premium, big-time center at the NHL trade deadline. So like I said, this just gives the Rangers a lot more flexibility, and I think that's certainly a good thing. Flexibility is always good. You always want a couple of forwards in the lineup that are capable of playing at least 2, if not all 3 of the positions. Barclay Goodrow used to be able to do that, so that was always nice. But if Kakko can do that, if he can at least play, right wing and center, then that gives the Rangers that much more flexibility going forward, and also a backup plan for the playoffs if Filip Chytil is not able to take the ice, when the postseason begins. And obviously the Rangers have to make the playoffs. We know that. I expect that they will, in spite of this tough loss last night. I will say, though, got to throw this out there. There was one bummer moment for Kaapo Kakko and that third line. They were on the ice for the go-ahead goal that was scored by Connor Zary in the third period. So with that, that is the first time all season that Kaapo Kakko and Will Cooley have both been on the ice at the same time when the opposition has scored a goal. So look, we knew that streak couldn't last forever, right? All good things have to come to an end sooner or later. It's been a really fun stat to keep track of, but regardless of what happened, I still see this as a big-time shutdown line and a line that has earned its ice time in big spots in the game, and hopefully that is the case going forward. In just a second, gonna shift gears a little bit. I want to shift our attention to the hand pass that was not called a hand pass, and the goal stood, and there was a whole bunch of controversy, and then Vincent Trocheck got really mad. We're going to break down all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even faster and even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Right now, is having an exclusive zone deal for the NHL Winter Classic event at Wrigley Field. Go to the Gametime app to purchase tickets and get 10% off bleacher seating and 20 to 25% off on home plate area seats. You've got Gametime Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., all in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout and seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, Rangers are going to be back in action on Saturday night at Edmonton at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So one more time for us East Coasters here to all stay up late, at least for the time being. They'll be back out west a little bit later in the season, but this will conclude this 4-game Western road trip. And whatever happens in that game, we'll be breaking it down in the following episode, which will very likely drop at some point on Sunday. But getting back to this game, we got to talk about this controversial hand pass situation in the second period that, of course, led directly to a Calgary Flames goal. We're probably all going to collectively give ourselves a headache going through this again, but we'll get through it together, and I'm going to break this down from every possible angle and just basically explain why I don't understand how and why. And when I say I don't understand, I'm looking for somebody to help me out here. If you see something in the rule, or you can compare this to some other play that's happened in recent NHL history and say, okay, this is why that was the correct ruling, by all means do so. Leave it in the YouTube comment section. Reach out to me on Twitter. Send me an email. Do whatever you got to do. I genuinely mean that. I'd like to just be able to understand this so that if it happens again, I can at least be like, okay, well, that's why there was no hand pass called there. But I've looked at this from every angle, and I can't make any sense out of it. And I also just want to say here, the everydayers, you guys know, I'm not one to bash the referees. I will do it from time to time. I mean, we are approaching 1,200 episodes here, so sooner or later, you're going to let loose on the zebras. But it's not really my style. I don't think they really tend to win and lose games for you. They miss some calls. They get most of them right. And I do think NHL officiating is an extraordinarily difficult job. With all that said, there was a ton of controversy due to this goal that the Flames scored. I'm just going to take you guys back through the play one more time, and then I'm going to have my thoughts on it. So the Flames are on the power play. They're up 1-0, second period. The puck goes around the boards, into the corner, kind of flutters into the air. Huberdeau reaches up, clear as day. He's got his hand in the air. He gloves it down, and the next player to touch it is Coronado. Huberdeau never touched it with his stick or anything like that, which would nullify the hand pass. Nobody on the Rangers touched it, which would also nullify the hand pass. It goes right to Coronado behind the net. Then you get about, 3, 4, 5 more passes in quick succession by the Flames. They really whip the puck around here. And then Sharangovich scores on a one-timer to make it 2-0 in favor of the Flames. The Rangers challenge this, as they should, and the call is upheld by the officials. And one other point that I'm going to make here real quick. I know that the officials on the ice are not having the final say when it comes to the review. This goes to Toronto in the Situation Room. They take a look at it. But when I say the refs or when I say the officials, I'm lumping everybody in together. I'm lumping in the referees on the ice. I'm lumping in the people in Toronto. Because to me, the people in Toronto, okay, they're not physically in the building. They're not wearing skates. They're not wearing striped shirts, but they're referees because they are making a big-time decision on this game or really any game around the NHL that is going to have a big impact on the outcome. And this isn't like, we're not talking about an offside call 5 minutes into the game. We're talking about, a goal standing or being overturned. I mean, they make big decisions. They're just as big of a part of the game as the referees on the ice. They don't get into the action as much as the refs on the ice do, obviously, but when they do, it's always going to be a big call because, more often than not, they're reviewing, whether a goal should be allowed or whether it should be disallowed. So now that we got that out of the way, let me also just say, I have never seen anything like this, a play like this, where a hand pass has not been called. Obviously, look, the refs can miss it, but once it goes to review and you see something like this, I have never seen this not ruled a hand pass. And I should also say that, the Rangers didn't play well in this game. I know that, and I acknowledge that. Doesn't change the fact that you need these calls to be correct. I don't care whether the Rangers have their A+ game or their F- game or whatever it might be. That doesn't change anything. The bottom line, the Rangers maybe didn't earn any breaks in this game, but to me, the refs got the call wrong because Huberdeau clearly reached up with his glove, clearly played the puck on purpose. It clearly hit his glove, and the next player to touch it was a Flames player. And the explanation that the referee gave on the ice, it was like they didn't even try to make any sense. Like, this is what the ref said. I wrote this down into my notes here. Verbatim, this is what he said while announcing to the crowd the decision to allow the play to stand. This is what he said. It was a deflection off the glove and not a hand pass. Okay. Where do I even start with this? First of all, my understanding has always been and is to this day, and again, correct me if I'm wrong about this, anything off the hand of a player on the ice that then goes directly to his teammate right after that, that's a hand pass. The only exception to that rule is when it happens in the defensive zone. In the defensive zone, you're allowed to do that. You can bat the puck with your hand. Your teammate can pick it up in the defensive zone, and on we go. The play continues. Any other part of the rink, and that's supposed to be a hand pass. I've never seen any discretion there as far as what the intent is, but all of a sudden now intent is coming into play on a goal that was scored by the Flames against the Rangers. And on top of all that, the explanation just doesn't make any sense. Huberdeau saw the puck coming toward him. It was in the air. He's looking right at it. He knows what he's doing. He knows that his best chance of making a play here is to glove it down. And that's, he's doing what he's got to do there. But, this was not a situation where there was any discretion or any discrepancy as far as like whether it hit his glove on purpose or not. He very clearly played the puck with his glove. And my understanding of the rule is that it doesn't even matter if it's on purpose or not. But this very clearly was on purpose. Huberdeau saw this puck coming a mile away. Like I said, it was one of those pucks that kind of just flutters. It wasn't like, a seed coming right at him. He reached up, he knew what he was doing, and he gloved it down. And the only other thing I can come up with is maybe you can say like, oh, well, it missed his glove. No, it didn't, first of all. And secondly, the ref said as much into the microphone after the review. Once again, the referee admitted it was a deflection off the glove. So again, they didn't even try to make sense with this explanation here. And if you want to go by the very literal definition, like word for word, verbatim, straight from the NHL rulebook, I put that in my notes here as well. This is what it says. A player shall be permitted to stop or bat a puck in the air with his open hand or push it along the ice with his hand, and the play shall not be stopped unless, in the opinion of the on-ice officials, he has directed the puck to a teammate or has allowed his team to gain an advantage, and subsequently possession and control of the puck is obtained by a player of the offending team, either directly or deflected off any player or official. So you listen to that, and you listen to everything I just said, and you explain to me how this is not a hand pass. I can't do it. If you can, more power to you, and I'd love to hear from you, and I genuinely mean that. I'm not being snarky or anything like that. I want to understand this rule, because if it happens again, especially like in the playoffs, that's what's really bad about this. In the playoffs, one of these kinds of calls is going to determine a playoff game and a playoff series. And I just hope that the Rangers aren't involved, because if something like this goes to review in the playoffs and it goes to Toronto, there's not going to be any good news coming for the Rangers when the referee makes his announcement to the crowd and when he makes the announcement to the people watching on TV. We know this. It never goes the Rangers' way. The only time that a review goes the Rangers' way is if there is like just complete black and white, 100% undeniable, indisputable evidence that it has to go the Rangers' way. And honestly, I'm not even so sure about that anymore based on what we saw in this game last night, because I would have thrown this play into that category as well. Again, if there's something that I'm not seeing or something about the rule that I'm not understanding, please lay it on me. Let me know. All this also led to Vincent Trocheck getting a penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct. That's another thing about this game. The Rangers took way too many penalties, but there were hand passes in this game both ways after this non-call was made, and the refs were calling it like they always call hand passes. You know, if it goes off somebody's hand and it gets played by a teammate, then it's a hand pass and the play stops. And Vincent Trocheck, what it looked to me happened, and I think a lot of you came to this conclusion as well, is once the hand pass was called, Vincent Trocheck decided to make kind of a wisecrack to the officials about like, oh, hey, you got that one right. You know, something like that. Maybe there was more colorful language. That's entirely possible as well. Trocheck was working the refs all night, but he finally got a penalty for this and was sent to the box. The Rangers were able to kill it off. But yeah, Trocheck, I mean, he was beyond done with the refs by the end of this game. Even at the end of this game, when the Flames were up 3-2 and the Rangers had their goalie pulled, Trocheck was, fighting for the puck along the boards and trying to move it away from the boards, trying to get back to the center of the ice. And it looked like he might have been hooked, and he was yelling hook at the referee and kind of threw his arm up into the air. So, I don't understand this ruling. That's the long and short of it. And again, if anybody does, please reach out and let me know, or just try to make some sense of this if you can. So in just a second, going to shift our attention to Igor Shesterkin. I thought he was awesome in this game, really kept the Rangers in this contest at a time in this game when the Rangers just apparently didn't feel like playing defense or forgot how to play defense or whatever the situation was there. But regardless, we will talk about that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our very good friends at DoorDash. Football is finally back, which means it's time to order your favorite game day food, snacks, and drinks on DoorDash without missing a play. DoorDash is always reliable. It's always there when you need it. It's awesome. It's convenient. You just pull up the app, you order whatever you need, and they take care of the rest. It's absolutely awesome. If you're gearing up for a Ranger game, cannot recommend DoorDash enough. It's really nice to do it on this West Coast road trip because you can order, if you're on the East Coast, you can order dinner and have it sent to you, eat dinner at a normal time, and then be all ready to go by the time that the Rangers drop the puck at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or, whatever these crazy start times might be. Bottom line, use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend your first $15 plus on your first order. Limited time offer, terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app right now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or over to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. All right, I figure we can go ahead and wrap up today's episode by giving some much-deserved props to Igor Shesterkin. He played very well in this game, basically kept the Rangers in it for, really the entire game, but especially the first period and most of the second period as well. I would come on here and I would say something about the Rangers team defense in this game, but it's very difficult for me to comment on something that does not exist because the Rangers did not play any defense at all early in this game. Igor was a man on an island, just shots being blistered at Shesterkin for basically the entire game. Certainly the first period, they were just peppering him, and there was little to no resistance by the Rangers. They couldn't get the forecheck going. I believe the final shot total at the end of the first period was 20-4 or 20-5, something like that. And shots on goal don't always tell the story, but they 100% did in this game. And certainly early in this game, the final tally was 49-29 in favor of the Flames. And honestly, that final shot total makes it sound closer than it actually was because there were only little spurts in this game where the Rangers had the better of play. Bottom line, Igor stops 46 of 49 shots. He was under fire right from the opening faceoff. Another bad start by the Rangers, as we were talking about a little bit earlier. And the Rangers took 5 penalties total in this game, including 4 of them in the first half of this game. Now, of course, one of those penalties I can't really fault them for because it was the challenge that didn't work out. They got the delay of game for challenging and not having it overturned. And to me, that play should have been overturned, but we've already talked about that. Bottom line, though, the Rangers are spending a bunch of time in the penalty box, and almost every penalty that the Rangers took in this game was the result of them not defending well enough, them not defending hard enough, and the Flames just having their legs better than the Rangers, the Flames outworking the Rangers, the Flames out hustling the Rangers. And as a result of that, you got to hook somebody down or, whatever the different penalties were. But a lot of these happened when the Flames were about to score, which on one hand, that's not the worst time to take a penalty. The offensive zone penalties, those are the worst. But again, the types of penalties that the Rangers took in this game, they were very reflective of how they were playing and how badly they were getting outworked, because they were getting outworked and then, I'm not in position to defend this guy or prevent a really good scoring chance. So I got to hold him or hook him or whatever it was. I got to take a penalty to prevent this puck from ending up in the back of the net. But as for Igor, man, I almost got desensitized to what he was doing in this game, because it became apparent pretty early in this one that the Rangers were not going to have their A game when it came to defense, and that guys were just going to be zipping to the front of the net. Guys were going to be getting left wide open. The Flames were going to get some opportunities off of the rush. So it got to the point where I was desensitized. And every time the Flames would go in toward the net and get one of these golden grade A scoring opportunities, it was kind of just like, okay, maybe he can do it again. Maybe he can stand on his head again and bail us out one more time here. And, again, looking at the shots on goal, it's not the end-all, be-all stat the way that some people think that it is. It doesn't always tell the story. I think a good example of it not telling the story was in the playoffs last year, specifically the second round against the Carolina Hurricanes. That's when all of a sudden shot attempts became the only thing that ESPN would talk about, and they would take a look at the Hurricanes shot attempts versus the Rangers shot attempts. It's like, yeah, because the Canes don't have any offensive mindset or game plan other than to just fire the puck at the net from every conceivable angle. So when you're playing the Canes and they end up with that many shots on goal, it's not that big of a deal, because, some of them are not from high dangerous scoring opportunities, and they're saves that Igor Shesterkin is very clearly and very, very easily going to make. But in a game like this, it felt like every shot that the Flames were taking were from high dangerous scoring opportunities, in deep, guys being left wide open. Everything was either a medium danger scoring chance or a high danger scoring chance. Igor really had his work cut out for him in this game. He had to stand on his head and took a beating, which leads me into my next point. I would like to see Jonathan Quick start the next game to close out this 4-game road trip here. I don't know if the Rangers will do it that way. We'll see. First of all, Quick has played great. I mean, you look at his numbers, you do the eye test, you do whatever you want to do. His save percentage right now is like .970, which is obviously unsustainable, but it's still a fun stat to throw out there while it lasts. But he's been fantastic, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to reward him with another game. And, you watch Igor in this game, and again, this was a high-stress, demanding game for Igor Shesterkin. He was involved in some pretty wild scrambles in front of the net. He was making some pretty acrobatic saves. He got taken down. It was accidental, but Blake Coleman clipped him behind the net, tripped him down. Coleman got called for goalie interference, so, Igor wiped out pretty hard there. There was an instance later in this game where he took some contact. Goalie interference probably could have been called again. It was not. But again, blue-collar performance for Igor Shesterkin. I give him props for that. And I'm sure Igor would probably want to get right back out there for the next one. But for all those reasons, the fact that Quick is playing well, and the fact that Igor, this was a high-stress game and under fire the entire way, you got to keep him fresh. For me, I'm going Jonathan Quick in the next game against the Edmonton Oilers. But we'll look and see how the Rangers want to play it. A couple more things before we call it here. Just a couple of quick hitters before this episode concludes. Filip Chytil. We're probably going to have at least a brief update about Filip Chytil in just about every episode going forward. But I know a lot of people, including myself, really care about Filip Chytil, and we're curious to know what's going on, and hoping he can get back out there. He did indeed rejoin the Rangers in Calgary. He did not practice with the team during their typical practice yesterday. But as I mentioned earlier, he was on the ice by himself after that. So he's at least skating, which would appear to be a step in the right direction. As far as when he's going to be back, very, very difficult to predict, especially with his injury history. Again, I talked about this in a recent episode. Apparently, it was not a concussion, this most recent thing, so we'll just kind of wait and see what happens. Mika Zibanejad seems to be okay as well. He blocked a shot during a penalty kill, and was back out there for the start of the second period. So that was nice. I don't think it was even mentioned afterwards. So we seem to be good there. And one programming note, we're not going to be doing a new episode on Thanksgiving this year. What we're going to do next week is we will have 3 episodes before Thanksgiving, and then no episode on Thanksgiving itself. And then on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, the Rangers actually play at 1 p.m. So what I'm going to do there, watch the game at 1, and then have a new episode up, later in the day on Friday, or possibly even at night on Friday. But regardless, 4 episodes rather than the usual 5 next week due to, obviously, Thanksgiving. So, yep, figure we can call it there. If anybody would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.